Well, as if it isn't dangerous enough for our troops in Afghanistan, there are now some new concerns over the effectiveness of getting wounded troops off the battlefield for life-saving medical treatment. The issue first came to light when an Army specialist on patrol in Kandahar stepped on a landmine. He survived that, but then died after it took an hour to pick him up off the battlefield and bring him back to the base. Now, Michael Yon first reported this story. He's a former Green Beret. He's turned blogger, and he's been embedded with the troops telling their stories. Army policy requires armed escorts for Medevac helicopters, which can reportedly cause delays. Now, this report caught the eye of a congressman. That congressman is Todd Akin. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and he joins us now. So, Congressman, it sounds like a big issue. There is some difference of opinion about quite how big. Why are we just hearing of this now, 10 years into this war?
Well, that's a very good question, and the thing that we're trying to find is, have we created bureaucracy or things which are getting in the way of getting the very fastest treatment possible? And the people, to their credit, that are providing the medical services are doing a fantastic job. People flying the helicopters are doing fine, but there's a set of rules that seem to be getting in the way, in this case costing us the life of one of our troops. The issues center around, first of all, a dust-off helicopter. That's an Army helicopter with a white cross on it. Now, the people in Afghanistan consider that a good target. They don't care whether it's carrying somebody wounded. And so the question is, first of all, should those helicopters be armed so that they can defend themselves? And the second question is a larger one of the deployment of helicopters in general and the rules that govern whether or not they can go in and pick someone up and who makes the call, and do they have the flexibility to get in and get somebody when it's safe, and should they be armed? So it's a combination of a series of issues, but it really is about having the right resource at the right place. And that's what we've been asking questions about.
We actually have some video of that situation that happened on the ground in Afghanistan, where the young soldier was walked over an IED. He's a triple amputee at this point of the video, and then you just see 45, 50 minutes pass before he gets picked up where they were dropped off. There's a look at the helicopter. Now, just to review that point, Medevac helicopters don't come in without Apache helicopters because they don't have guns on board, so they need that protection. They need everybody to be safe. You just wrote a letter to the Defense Secretary that was joined by 16 other lawmakers. Tell us about that, and have you heard a response yet?
Well, first of all, no, we have not heard a response, and the things that we have heard at different times seem to be kind of conflicting stories. The helicopter that came there was as I said, it was called a dust-off, but you have another helicopter, which is the same airframe that the Air Force uses, called a Pedro, and it mounts a couple of machine guns so it can defend itself. The question is, does it make sense to put the machine guns that the Air Force is using onto the Army helicopters? The Army is saying no, and yet we're saying, well, wouldn't that have given you protection so that you could have gotten in there half an hour earlier?
So this is what the Army says, if I could, just because we did get a statement from them. They say, and they point out rightfully so, that they are very successful with bringing troops off the battlefield, a 92% survival rate for the wounded in Afghanistan. They say that if they heard that from their battlefield commanders that this was a problem, they would change the policy, but they did a review in 2008 and they didn't think a change was necessary. So what more do you want to hear, and what more change do you want, if that's what the Army official statement is?
Well, you know, there's an Army official statement, then there's a little bit of common sense, and you have to try to sort things out here, because the Air Force is obviously doing it a different way. They have helicopters that have guns on them that still can pick up patients. So the question is, when the people in Afghanistan pay no attention to the white cross on the helicopter, does it not make sense to put machine guns so that you don't have to wait for the escort helicopter? Or even if you have two dust-off helicopters, if both are armed, one could go in and pick up the person that's been hurt in combat, and the other one could be flying the air cover.
Is austerity to blame for this, Congressman? Is it defense cuts? Is it perceived defense cuts? Is it not the right equipment on the ground? Is that part of this conversation, or is that a completely separate issue?
If that were part of the conversation, I'd say I understand, because we have just been cutting the military, in my opinion, way too much. So I would understand that answer, but that's not what we've heard. We've heard no, but there's no point to put any machine guns on the helicopters, and yes, they're all deployed properly. Again, the people that are running the helicopters, the medical care that people are getting is fantastic, but that doesn't say that you can't tighten up the game and get helicopters in more rapidly. And the fact that the Air Force can do it one way and the Army is refusing to do it that way raises a question. Yeah, the Army has credibility, but so does the Air Force. And why does one work and then they're refusing to take a look at that on the other side?
It's an interesting question and an interesting story we're going to continue to follow. I don't want to end this segment without mentioning the name of the young soldier who died. He was Army Specialist Chaz Ray Clark. That was the picture that we showed on the screen, and we think of his family today as we continue to talk about his story. Congressman Akin, thank you so much. We'll talk soon, sir. Thank you.